Welcome back, everyone. In today's lesson, we're going to talk about how to add rational numbers. Before we talk about what rational numbers are, I just want you to know that today's lesson is going to combine two things that we've learned already. It's going to use what we know about adding integers, and it's going to use what we know about adding decimals and fractions together. Last year in 6th grade, you learned more about adding and subtracting fractions and decimals. And this year we learned how to add integers, and today we're going to be combining those things. It's important that we understand what a rational number is. So the word rational has the root word of ratio, and a rational number is a number that we can write as a fraction. So a rational number is a number that can be written as a fraction. To add rational numbers like negative and positive fractions and decimals, we follow the same signs as adding integers together. So to add numbers with the same sign, we add the absolute value of the integers. And we use the same sign as the addends in the sum. To add integers with different signs, or to add numbers with different signs, we find the absolute value of each number. And then subtract the lesser absolute value from the greater absolute value. I'm going to use the sign of the number with the greater absolute value. To add decimals, we want to remember to line up the decimal place values, add like you normally would, and then bring the decimal down into the sum. To add fractions, they must have common denominators. We're going to keep the denominators the same and add the numerators. So just to review, when you're adding two numbers that have the same sign, what we do is we add the two absolute values together, and then we use the same sign in our answer. When we add two numbers that have different signs, like a positive and a negative, we take their absolute values and subtract them, and whichever number has the higher absolute value, that tells us what the sign is going to be of our answer. When we work with decimals, we want to line up our place values. So line up our tenths with our tenths, hundredths with our hundredths. And when we add fractions, we want to make sure that we find common denominators. We're going to keep the denominators the same and then add the numerators together. I'm going to do these two problems for you. You're going to copy them down. So in the first one, I've got two fractions that I need to add together. And before I can do anything else, I need to find a common denominator. So what I'm thinking about now is I'm thinking, what's a number that 4 goes into and that 5 goes into? And if you're not sure right away, look at the multiplication table and look for a common multiple of 4 and 5. What I'm going to do is I'm going to use 20 as my common denominator. So I write two fractions with 20 as my denominator. And 4 times 5 is 20. So 3 times 5 is my numerator. And I remember to bring the negative sign down. 5 times 4 is 20. So I do 2 times 4. So what I just did is I found that 20 is going to be my common denominator. The reason it's 20 is because 4 goes into 20, or 4 divides into 20. 5 divides into 20. So 4 times 5 is 20. So I multiplied 3 times 5 to get 15, and I made my answer negative, my 15 negative. 5 divides into 20 4 times, so I multiply 2 times 4 to get 8. Now when I get my answer is going to have 20 as the denominator, and then I just need to add negative 15 plus 8 like I normally would. So you can use the number line if you want to, or you can imagine that you're starting at negative 15 and then going 8 steps in the positive direction. So after 8 steps, you're still going to be in the negatives. And you're going to end at negative 7. I'm going to circle that because that's your answer. So here's what we did, is we found a common denominator first. We used multiplication to find the new numerators. Denominator stayed the same, and we just did negative 15 plus 8. And it's a number line, or you can use some other method, but we need to find out that the answer is negative 7/20. Here in this example, I've got a negative plus another negative, and so I know that that means my answer is going to be a negative answer. So I want to remember that, so I'm just going to circle it. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take these two absolute values and I'm going to add them together. Notice how I've just put an extra 0 here to fill in the space, but I have my decimal place values lined up. So the whole numbers are lined up, the tenths place is lined up, and the hundredths place is lined up. So 4 plus 0, 3 plus 6, I need to remember to bring that negative sign back. Okay. So now what you're going to do is you're going to flip your page over and you're going to answer the questions on the back. Whenever you have a fraction problem, you want to remember to find common denominators, just like we have here. So find common denominators. Whenever you have decimals, make sure you line up the place values. So line up the place values, line up the place values. This one is a bit more of a challenge question. So don't panic if you can't figure this out right away. But what you're going to do is you're going to do it in pieces. So you're going to pretend like there are parentheses here. You're going to find that answer and then add negative 7 to the answer. When you're done, you're going to ask for the exit ticket. And the exit ticket has 2 questions that you need to know how to answer. And then back, there are 2 more questions that you need to know how to answer. And that's the end of the lesson once you finish those things. You can stop the video now and start working on the problems that are on the back.